What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's TV review of the Apple TV Plus original series, Masters of the Air. This will follow part 1, which is directed by Cary Fukunaga, and the series is created by John Orloff. Okay, so most people know that Band of Brothers is considered probably one of the greatest miniseries of all time. It's one of the most authentic miniseries of all time when it comes to its subject matter. Pacific, not as well received, but still well beloved in a lot of respects. And I think, once again, I think Band of Brothers is the greatest miniseries of all time outside of Roots. And so when a new series comes out that's being produced by, of course, Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks, as well as Graham Yost and Gary Ghostman, I'm looking forward to it, to be fairly honest, because I know they're going to put a lot of love and effort into it. And then you have Cary Fukunaga directing a few episodes, as well as Ryan Bowden and Anna Fleck. And it's a miniseries that I was just kind of anticipating because, once again, it's in that realm of the companion pieces of the, of course, Band of Brothers in the Pacific. So here we have the 100th Bombardier Group, who basically flew missions over Germany, and it's a series like the other two series where it consists of some well-known actors as well as a lot of unnamed actors who probably will become big later on in their kind of career. And it basically, in this first episode, which once again is directed by Cary Fukunaga, kind of shows the early makings of how this group became to be and kind of their first missions and so on and so forth in World War II. And so with that said, going into this, there's a lot of build up to what this series is going to become and how this series is going to operate. So in essence, we're getting introductions to all these characters, which we'll learn later on, who of course are real life people, but we're introduced to Austin Butler and Callum Turner's character, who of course play Gail Cleven and of course John Egan. And they're the two individuals that are kind of the, I would call the linchpin characters of the series, the ones you're going to follow, the ones that are going to be kind of the anchor to what the series becomes. But you'll also see other characters kind of develop and kind of position themselves into this. Barry Keoghan's in this, Anthony Boyle, David Shields, Matt Gavin. All these characters will start getting kind of bigger and bigger roles as the series moves along. But this first episode I thought was fantastic in the simple fact of how it's a setup episode, how it kind of starts the series moving forward and how it kind of develops these characters. And I like the fact that the narration kind of gives you a little bit of insight to these individuals about how these are friends and how they're on training missions and how they really haven't done a lot of war missions. But of course, the character played by Callum Turner is kind of the head of this 100th Bombardier Group, or at least the head of operations in a lot of respects. And of course, Austin Butler's Cleven character is kind of the wet behind the ears, hasn't done a lot of missions yet and stuff like that. Actually, it shows his first mission in this episode. But it does a really nice job. I don't think it does as nice a job as what Band of Brothers did, but Band of Brothers is kind of a unique experience where I think in like the Pacific, where this episode does a lot of heavy lifting on, what these characters have to do to get to that first mission, which ends up being a failure. And I don't know. Even though the episode wasn't as good as the first episode of Band of Brothers, I felt this episode is much stronger than what the first episode of the Pacific, which I actually don't remember a lot of, to be fairly honest, because it's not really that memorable, even though it's a pretty good series. But this first episode just it allows these characters to kind of, we see that they like to have fun. They're a very brotherly experience. They have a lot of missions behind their belt when it comes to training missions, but you can also see that they're very young individuals, which is what is crazy about World War II or any war is how young these fighter pilots or how young these like infantrymen really were going into war. So the characters played by Austin Butler or Callum Turner or of course Barry Keoghan or of course, like I said, Rafferty Law and stuff like that, they're like in their 20s. It's crazy to watch because they're given so much like authority to put behind their belt that when you watch them like up in the air doing missions or doing training missions or something like that, they feel so inexperienced, but they have to be on their A game. So for instance, there's a mission where the guy who runs the coordinations of like where they're supposed to be at puts them off course and they end up in France or something like that. And you watch how that inexperienced nature really kind of comes into effect because these boys are on the line for life and death. They're trying to represent their country. And it just really shows that it doesn't matter how much experience you have in a war, this kind of stuff will happen. And what makes this first episode so great is that kind of inexperience, because they have the moments where like they're sitting drinking beer, they're getting drunk, but when the first mission happens, Austin Butler's character goes up and he's in charge of a squadron of I think like 20 planes or something like that, or a little bit more. and they don't expect to have to deal with like not cloud cover, but like fog and heavy cloud cover, stuff like that. So their mission gets scrubbed, and then they get bombarded with like ammunition, and they get bombarded with like fighter planes and stuff like that from the other country of Germany, and they lose a bunch of pilots. And you watch as two characters of the Barry Keoghan and Austin Butler character watch as this happens and how it affects them mentally, because once again these companion series, the Band of Brothers in the Pacific, as well as this series, it deals with the psychiatric nature or psychology nature of how it affects them in war. So as it moves along, you're going to start to see them kind of degrade in the kind of their mannerisms and how they operate and stuff like that. So it does a really nice job of just showing that. Like I said, they lose like 5 or 6 planes in the first operation that Austin Butler's character of Clevin takes part in, and it's a really emotional thing. But that's what this series does pretty well in its first episode. I mean, it's it allows the characters to kind of see what they're in for. I don't know exactly how far into the war this takes place, but you can definitely tell it's very early, and there's a lot of like tragedy ahead. There's gonna be a lot of these individuals that are the main characters that you're probably gonna see die. I mean, there's a lot of them that died in the first episode that were like main characters, and it's a really sad experience, and that's what the series does very, very well. I do think that the visual, this is definitely $150 million production. You can definitely tell. I think the visual fidelity, the CGI is really well done for a TV series. I know Cary Fukunaga had his kind of misstep with the last James Bond movie, but there's one thing that he is very well versed at doing, very well known for doing, is very shooting action, shooting suspense in really well dramatic, kinetic ways. And it shows here. The minute they go flying, like you're constantly like moving in different seats and different parts of the plane, and you're never sure where you're at either, and you're constantly kind of like confused, and it really feels like you're part of the crew. And Cary Fukunaga does a really nice job of just like allowing the characters to kind of develop, but allowing them to still be kind of really not understanding their plight and what's exactly going on. It does a really, really nice job of that. And I think Cary Fukunaga just once again shows that he's a really competent director when it comes to these types of things. And even this first episode, it has some great action set pieces. It has the moment where like the plane's trying to land, but one of the tire wells won't open, and so therefore they have to land the plane on its belly. And like I said, the air combat sequence where they're trying to bomb a specific target and they had to scrub it because there's they can't visibly see it, and you see like the German army shooting off the big gun turrets and stuff like that, and then you see the planes, and like I said, you get a good view of like the turret underneath belly turret, or the turret from above, and you see it jam, or you see all kinds of things go wrong. And then once again, when it comes to plane fighting, your kind of senses are all over the place because planes are going so quickly that if you can't keep track of them, they can get you down. It could be a small fighter jet that could take down a bombardier jet or something like that, or bombardier plane. And it's really kind of chaotic in how well it does it. And I give it a lot of credit for kind of knocking that out of the park. So I think the first episode does a really nice job of all the kinetic energy. I think it still struggles that it tries to be as kinetic as like the Band of Brothers first episode, but I think that episode was so unique and so different from anything we've ever seen before, because it was in the right at like a couple years right after Saving Private Ryan and stuff like that I think that it struggled. So I mean, or it would never be replicated, kind of like what now is. But I think this is a very good, very 8.5 out of 9, 8.5, 9 out of 10 episode where we get enough of the character developments. Like I said, Austin Butler's having to put a lot of weight on his shoulders, and he still sounds like Elvis, which is really strange, but I can't fault him for that. But Callum Turner does a really nice job. He's been kind of having a couple of big roles recently with stuff like this and Boys in the Boat. And you have a lot of other characters, which, once again, there's 150,000 people in in these series, so it's kind of difficult to kind of sparse who is going to be the big lead characters. But similar to like the Band of Brothers, there's characters that kind of come out into the mix. So we'll have to see how that plays out in the next few episodes, which there are 9. So we'll see which characters present themselves. I'm sure I'll recommend which characters do and which characters don't. So But with that said, that is going to be my take of the first episode of Masters of the Air. Once again, a very competent, well put together, very slick episode directed by Cary Fukunaga. And yeah, I'll give it like an 8.5 out of 10. So once again, there's a lot there, but there's not like a huge amount of stuff. So it's very well produced, but it still needs more. So anyways, with that said, that'll do it. That'll be my take of part 1 of Masters of the Air, now premiering on Apple TV Plus. Thank you so much for watching. Comments below. What do you think of the first part? Are you ready for the second part, which released on the same day? Let me know in comments what you think. Otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell top to find what's coming next. If you like the video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.